All right, man, peace. So in January of 2017, Donald Trump was inaugurated president of the United States, and the liberal demographics of America lost their minds. The women's liberation groups, they lost their minds. The so-called LGBTQ community lost their minds. The so-called pro-black contingent lost their minds. And they attempted to initiate forms of chaos through protests. One of the main ways that they tried to do that was through the so-called Women's Parade, or the Women's Liberation Parade, which was led by a lot of, or many, female Hollywood actresses, like, what was one of them? I believe it was Madonna was there. What's his other chick name? Scarlett Johansson, she was there. That $2 hoe from Hollywood, she was there. And many of the other quickly expiring actresses in Hollywood descended upon Washington, D.C., and attempted to lambaste Donald Trump as a form of acting out or throwing a tantrum because of their unhappiness at their queen lesbian, Hillary Clinton, not getting selected or elected, whatever you want to call it. Well, anyway, let's jump forward to this past weekend, which marked the approximate 1-year anniversary of that parade. The female contingent, or the liberal female contingent, let me specify, of America decided to have another parade. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
That's ahead.
But we begin this half hour with the growing influence of women in politics. The inauguration of Donald Trump 1 year ago today prompted women's marches around the world last year. A CBS News poll finds women are still dissatisfied with the president.
63.
Well, let me say this. The reason why there were women's marches around the world last year had very little to do with Donald Trump. It was a concerted attempt by the socialist factions across the world to destabilize quote-unquote male hegemony. And they used Donald Trump as an excuse. Neither Donald Trump nor the inauguration of any president of the United States is going to initiate or motivate females from all across the world to protest or march. All of that was contrived, and it was coordinated by the socialist powers that be. Much like during the latter part of the 1700s, going into the 1800s, many of the socialist groups, really Luciferian groups, they sought to sow discord across the world, particularly in Europe, by starting many socialist movements. If you were to look up what occurred in 1848, there were revolutions in almost every country in Europe that year, under the inspiration of Karl Marx, who was a paid agent of the Luciferian order known as the League of the Just. Same thing is happening today with these females. They're being used as pawns. In regards to this women's poll stating that 63% of women disapprove of President Trump's job performance, I guarantee you 85% of women disapprove of their own lives. Because the vast majority of these liberal females, they have to go march and protest to take attention off of how much they hate themselves and their life. Most of these broads are strung out on antidepressants. All right, when I say most, I'm talking about the liberal ones. Why is that? Because the woman was put on the earth to be a helpmeet to the man and to be a mother. Is there anything particularly wrong with a woman working? In a perfect society, you prefer the woman not to work, but in a society like this, that is run on a credit-based economic system, that is utilizing fiat money, meaning money with no gold or silver backing it, the female basically has to work. That was the point of destroying the currency in the first place. One of the points. But anyway, let's see what they have to say.
3% disapprove of the president's handling of his job. Half say his policies have hurt women. And
when they say that his policies have hurt women, they're talking about the whore pills. That's the main thing that they're referring to. He's no longer going to make corporations subsidize their whore pills. Remember, the liberal females in general, but the liberal female in particular, they believe that everything should be handed to them. They don't want to have to work or earn anything. When I say earn anything, they don't want anything to be stipulated to them that they have to earn it. They want to be able to work so that they can have their own money and not have to listen to a man. But they want to have wanton benefits that are targeted and aimed towards their demographic.
And 82% say it's important that more women are elected to office.
I agree. I think that men should protest. You know, they had a female protest, was it last year or 2 years ago? I think it was Women Don't Show Up to Work Day, some shit like that, that was supposed to show the importance of women. I think that men should do that. I think that men should have a let women run everything week. Because, you know, most of the liberal females, they think that, or they believe that no one else could do what they do. And I'm here to tell you, they're correct. The woman has an essential role and cannot be replaced. And at the same time, they cannot replace what the man does. So I believe that that men across America should have a week-long ceremony where they refuse to run the country, they refuse to make any decisions, and they let the woman run the country. Let's see how much they like it. I mentioned this before a long time ago. One of my favorite shows as an adolescent, as a preteen, was the Martin Lawrence show, Martin. And there was a great episode where he allowed Gina to come on the radio, and she started talking about their personal relationship, and the audience liked it. And the radio station manager, Stan, asked Gina to become a guest on Martin's show every week. So she started to get gassed up, and Martin was getting vexed about it because she was bringing a lot of their personal business to the show. And Martin's best friend Cole said, you know, why don't you just, next time she's on the radio, just leave. She'll see that she can't do your job. And that's what Martin did. And Gina got traumatized because the audience turned on her. Because it's easy to gain attention for yourself when you're trying to siphon energy away from the man. But when the onus is strictly put on you, you're going to crumble. And that's the same thing that needs to be done to most of these females. That's just as a test. Really what men need to do is to shut this bullshit down expeditiously. But that's not going to happen. Why is that? Because females being risen up in this society into more prominent positions is a sign that America is circling the drain. This society is circling the drain. Whenever low-level demographics are starting to get exalted, when I say low-level demographics, I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about delusional women. I'm talking about the liberal females who have psychological disorders and wish that they were men. Secretly, most of these females wish that they were men and they're agents of chaos. I'm not talking about the females who have their head on straight. You know, the 0.5% of them. 0.5 to 1.5% of them that have their head on straight. But anyway.
Paula Reed is at the Lincoln Memorial, where this year's Women's March is set to kick off later today. Paula, good morning.
And all of these protests and parades always culminate at the Lincoln Memorial. You notice that? You know why that is? Because you have that obelisk there. All of that is done in inspiration of Baal. The obelisk is also known as the shaft of Baal or the shaft of Osiris. Okay? All of this is done to promote discordianism. They venerate Saturn or Osiris, and I keep touching on this point. Why is it? Because it's pertinent.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's right. The Women's March returns here to Washington, D.C. and many other cities across the country today, but they're not expecting those same record crowds that we saw last year. But organizers tell me they're not focused on crowd size. They're focused on winning elections. A day after President Trump's inauguration, millions of women donned pink hats and marched in protest. This year, it's less about matching hats and more about midterm elections. Organizers have dubbed it Power to the Polls.
We're really encouraging people to go vote in November of 20.
Now, this female here, her name is Sarah Sophie Flicker. This person here is a plant, brothers. You do any research on her, you'll see that her grandfather, her maternal grandfather, was involved with implementing socialist democracy in Denmark. You look at the colors that she's wearing, the black, white, and red. That is for Hermetic philosophies, the bringing together of opposites, which is the black and the white, and the red represents the veneration of blood. Okay, she is a Baal worshiper. She is a priestess of Pan. And I'll probably delve deeper into that at the end of this video. But she's a plant. Okay? She venerates Pan and she venerates the goddess Diana. She's an agent of discord, an agent of chaos.
November of 2018.
Sarah Sophie Flicker is a national organizer for the Women's March.
National organizer, that's code word for socialist plant. Okay?
We will absolutely be registering voters, getting out the vote, knocking on doors. having, conversations.
If you pay attention, even her nail polish is black. Her outfit is coordinated.
Conversations with people one-on-one about why it's so important to vote.
The effort is working. Emily's List, a Women's March sponsor, coaches Democratic women on running for office. They have trained more than 26,000 women to run for local, state, and national office over the...
Now, how do you coach people to run for office? I thought that when you run for office to represent your district, in New York case, your borough, your city, your state, you're supposed to have a very firm understanding of civic duties, of municipal duties, of finance, leadership. How can you coach somebody into that? That's something that has to be inside of them, that they're truly galvanized to make their locality a better place. Once again, it shows you that many of these females in politics, they're only doing it for attention. Many of the men are only doing it for attention also, by the way. But yes, expect to see many more prominent women, particularly in politics, as this report is stating. You're going to see many of them as governors, as mayors, as leaders of labor unions, etc. Anything where they can garner more attention and acclaim for themselves. This is the time period that we're in, especially as this society starts to descend.
Last year, but the Women's March has come under criticism.
Now you see how they frame the Women's March right in juxtaposition to the obelisk that is there. Once again, this is all ritualistic. This is not just for social reform. This is also to imply that there is a spiritual reform as well. Remember, what goes along with the veneration of the quote-unquote sun god, whether that be Osiris or Baal, and I know a lot of the Kemet dudes are going to say Osiris is not the sun god, it's Ra or it's Heru. Osiris is the sun god as well. He's the god of the underworld, but he's also the sun god as well. Why is that? Because he represents that middle member of what's known as the triune. You have what's known as the sage, you have the father god, and then you have the son, S-O-N. So the sage is who? It's Ra. The father god is Osiris. Then you have the son, who is the incarnate, that is Heru. And you see that over and over again in the so-called quote-unquote pagan mythologies, which is just a retelling of the story of Cush and Nimrod and Semiramis. As I've stated in different videos, you also sometimes have a composite where they'll add elements of Shem or Noah or Adam or Ham, or as he's known by the Kemet brothers, Chem. But for the most part, it's in the veneration of that triune. Whenever you see the exaltation of the feminine principle, it's for the mother goddess, especially when it comes to the woman liberation angle, is speaking about Diana or Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of the hunt. Okay? And it's always in concert with the adoration of the penis of Baal or the penis of Osiris. Remember, Aset was able to salvage the penis of Osiris according to the mythological story so that she could create Heru. So the woman descending on Washington, the liberated females descending on Washington towards the penis of Osiris, represents once again them coming together and the proverbial liberated woman being inseminated by the penis. It's all in exaltation of the sun god incarnate, that is Heru or Apollo.
For only representing the views of liberal women. Rachel Simon was one of tens of thousands of women at the other big march in Washington, Friday's March for Life.
Now I'm going to rewind this back for a second. They touched on something that I truly wanted to highlight, which is the fact that there is starting to be a separation, a fracturing in these women's movements, as many regular females are starting to understand that most of these protests are only to exalt the liberal woman. The cameras are only exposing or showing what the liberal females are marching for. They're not showing marches like this. Let me rewind it back.
She says the Women's March 26,000 women to run for local, state, and national office over the last year. But the Women's March has come under criticism for only representing the views of liberal women. Rachel Simon was one of tens of thousands of women at the other big march in Washington, Friday's March for Life. She says the Women's March excludes pro-life women.
Of course it does, because they don't consider pro-life women to be women. The new model for the perfect female in Western society or Western civilization is based on the principle of Diana. Once again, brothers, these female liberation movements and marches are led by socialist forces. Socialism is just code for Luciferianism. Luciferianism is just code for the rites and the rituals that were created by Cush to advance his son, Asar or Osiris or Nimrod, and his wife. Okay? That's all it is. So whenever you hear socialist, you think Luciferian. Whenever you hear Luciferian, it's talking about Nimrod and Semiramis. So you're always going to see the veneration of the penis, of the son, of the liberated female, which is just the avatar, the fleshly manifestation of the goddess Diana or Minerva, the goddess of wisdom.
There's a blatant hypocrisy in the type of women the Women's March wants, and they're not a march or a movement about empowerment. They're a movement about picking women that only agree with them.
No shit. I've been saying that for the longest time. Ding.
Them.
Flickr denies the Women's March is an event exclusively for Democrats. The march was a demonstration against a Republican president, and it's now turned into a movement to get Democrats elected. So is it fair to say the Women's March is a partisan event?
I wouldn't say that it's partisan, but I would say if you look at this administration, like who predominantly makes up this administration, white men, and
now you heard that bullshit? That's a normal tactic that is utilized by the socialist liberal female movement to try to court favor with the so-called the black plight. Let's get them on our side. That's why I always reiterate to you, brothers, they try to court the favor, the accompaniment of the so-called black man. They're only using you. Look at this bitch. She looks like Elvira on crack. It's a joke. And once again, this female is a worshiper of Pan. Okay? She's a plant. That's all she is. And you can tell just by the color scheme that she has on. This whole thing is a ritual. The entire march was a ritual to lure in silly females. I can't say this enough. This whole stratagem is based on giving attention to females who normally don't get it. Older, less attractive females.
And I think what I can say about the Women's March is that it represents women's interests. And that's not partisan or nonpartisan.
What the hell does that even mean? This bitch don't even know what she's saying. Something is either partisan or it's nonpartisan. How could it be neither partisan nor nonpartisan? Nonpartisan means that you don't favor either party. These are the type of dumb, untrained bitches that are representing this so-called female liberation shit. That's why I say, brothers, you know what? That's what men should do. Have a week off where they say, we're not going to get involved in anything strategic or logistical. You women run it, since you think that you can do every damn thing. Because 90% of these females that they claim are running for political office are going to be puppeted by men behind the scenes. Okay? That's how it's going to go. All this shit is a joke. This female, by the way, is also married to a socialist director, an agent of chaos named Jesse Peretz. He directs that show Girls on MTV. Pardon me, not MTV. Might as well be MTV. HBO. With that fat, degenerate, silly Caucasian bitch, Lena Dunham. The one who talked about raping her little sister when she was young. When she talked about finger popping her little sister. Read about that. The same chick, Lena Dunham, who got mad at Odell Beckham for ignoring her at the Met Awards or the Met Gala, whatever that was, where Odell Beckham went there and Lena Dunham was dressed in drag. She was dressed in a man's ensemble, and she got frustrated that Odell Beckham was sitting at her table and wasn't paying her any mind, and actually had the nerve to tweet it or put it on one of these social media platforms, made an ass of herself, and had to apologize for it. She's the star of one of the more degenerate shows on television called Girls, about 4 white bitches that run around Brooklyn fucking everybody and making asses of themselves. What's her name was also on that show? The white broad from Get Out, the little skinny broad. Point being is that this female is married to the director of that show. That's why I always tell you, brothers, everything is connected, man.
organizers will wrap this weekend's marches with a big event in Las Vegas tomorrow.
Yeah, the big event's probably a big orgy.
They chose that location because it's in a state where Hillary Clinton defeated President Trump by a razor-thin margin. So it symbolizes how every vote counts, especially this year. Alex?
And just like they're trying to foment all of this, this ardent female participation in politics, that's the same way that all the Trump supporters are sitting back. And I told my pops this a while ago, last time I spoke to him on this political issue. I told him, you watch, the next time, the next election, there are going to be a lot of brawls. There are going to be stabbings. There are going to be murders at these voting booths. You watch. Because the Trump supporters, they don't say anything. The super liberals, they like to run their mouth all day. A lot of these females are going to go to these voting booths trying to harass and argue with so-called Trump supporters, and they're going to get something that they do not expect. All right? That's why I tell brothers, stay away from all this madness.
Paula Reed in Washington. Thanks, Paula. The early numbers show that there is going to be a surfeit, a historic high in terms of female candidates.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. The march last year was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. The spirit and the turnout was truly amazing. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year.
Yes, it was extraordinary. It was amazing. Notice he didn't say that it was good. Extraordinary and amazing. Something can be extraordinarily and amazingly bad and stupid. But anyway, just pay attention to a lot of the psychological manipulative tactics that they're trying to use. All right. Anyway, peace. Okay, so now in the video that I just did on the latest Women's March, I noted all of the imagery that they had pertaining to the clear veneration of the shaft of Baal. And I stated that the origins and the reasoning behind the women's liberations movement is to show discordianism, to try to fracture society by utilizing certain agents of chaos. One of them being the main Caucasian female that was highlighted in the video, that being Miss Sarah Sophie Flicker. I stated that she's a socialist plant. I stated that because it's a fact. When you look up information on her, her maternal grandfather was the one who introduced socialist democracy into Denmark. I also noted that I could tell by how she was dressed, the color coding that she was using, that she clearly has understanding of the Hermetic principles. And as I always tell you, brothers, in many of the videos where I touch on that topic, Hermes is just another name for Cush. The name Hermes literally means the son of Ham, okay, or the son of Chem. That is who Hermes is. He is the god of mathematics, the god of communication, the god of science, writing, etc. He's also known as Thoth or Tahuti. He's also known as Mercury. He's also known as Pan. He was also known as Khnum, Khnum. I mentioned him in the video that I did on Wicca. That is the original name for the entity known today as the quote-unquote Baphomet, the god of this current world, particularly the entertainment industry. I say all that to say this, that female is clearly a believer and an adherent to the Hermetic philosophies and to the worship of Pan, the god of man, boy, love, as above, so below. You notice here in the depiction of the Baphomet that he has both male and female parts. That is the point of equality and the women's liberation movement, is to get women to embrace trying to be men and to get men to embrace trying to be women. And what they do is they very craftily play on the fact that many females have been denigrated and treated improperly in this society. Let me make that very clear. And as I make very clear in all my videos, is it okay for men to go around sexually assaulting, sexually harassing females? Absolutely not. That is not a component of manhood. But they're utilizing that issue and trying to use it as a Trojan horse so that they can sneak in the veneration of this entity here, Pan or Khnum, who is really Cush. And I'm going to prove that right now. When you pay very attention to this entity here, you see, of course, that he has the goat or the ram's head. You see the moon, the crescent moon, which is a symbol of the mother goddess, Diana. You also see the upright pentagram or the 5-pointed star, which represents also the feminine principle. You see that he has the female breasts. You see the right hand is pointing upwards. The left hand is pointing downwards. Now let's look at a photo that she took, Miss Sarah Sophie Flicker. Now this is a photo that I found of Miss Sarah Sophie Flicker. As you can see, she's doing the same exact pose. This is what I mean when I tell you, brothers. They utilize agents of chaos, okay? So-called activists and quote-unquote rebellion leaders or rabble rousers. They're agents of the international bankers. A lot of them don't even know that, all right? But when you talk about ultra left-wing and ultra-liberal, super-liberal, all that means is that they venerate Pan behind closed doors, okay? Look at this female right here. She's doing the same exact pose. The only difference is that her right hand is in the shape of the so-called quote-unquote peace sign, which represents Pan or Cernunnos. The V sign represents the vagina, the worship of the vagina, the mother goddess. It also represents, in the rituals of Pan, the double penetration in both the female vagina and in the anus. Okay? But anyway, I've made my point. Also, you can see that she has the Nero's cross on the right hand portion of the photo, so on and so forth. Anyway, peace.